channel. For those of you that are returning, welcome back. I appreciate you coming back to watch another video. For those of you that are new here, my name is Kiva and I create lifestyle, travel, and more recently content related to my pregnancy as a first-time mom of advanced maternal age. Today I'm going to be doing my labor and delivery story time, chit chat, vlog, kind of all things rolled into one. You'll see once we get started, which I'm really excited about. Just as a recap, I gave birth on April 24th. That was about 3 days before my anticipated due date. I was induced, which if you have been following my journey, then that's not really a surprise. I was made well aware early in my pregnancy that I would, likely be induced if my baby didn't come at a certain time frame in my pregnancy. So I'm going to get into a little bit of the induction and then kind of like post delivery and then, kind of what it's been like, since we've been home. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so like I said, I knew that, once I reached my 39th week, if I had not went into labor, that there would most likely be a discussion about me being induced because my OBGYN and my maternal fetal medicine specialist had indicated that they would recommend that I don't go past 40 weeks. So I hit my 39th week on April 20th, which also happened to be my 39th birthday. At that appointment, my doctor decided, after we kind of discussed it, he gave me two options, wait a little while longer and see if he comes within the next week, or we can go ahead and schedule you for your induction and get you on the schedule for the hospital. And so I decided to go ahead and get on the schedule. And so I was scheduled to be induced on April 23rd, which was a Sunday. So my doctor went over, she called in the order, gave instructions to labor and delivery for my induction. And she also did a quick cervical check at that point, at that appointment. And I was still that, if you've been following, I kind of was slow to dilate. So I was at that kind of like 1.5 centimeters of dilation. I left not really expecting to go into labor over the next few days and really kind of looking forward to my induction day. Sunday rolls around and me and my husband, we at this point we're already packed and everything. So, we get our stuff together and we head over to labor and delivery, and we're supposed to be there at 5 p.m. So the thing about an induction is that it's more casual. We had time to stop and eat and mosey along and get to the hospital. So I'll roll like a quick clip of me and kind of like my thoughts as I got ready to head out. Today is April 23rd and it is induction day, and I am equal parts nervous and excited, but I figured that I would vlog the experience just for other people who may also get induced, and then also just so that I can have the footage and the memories. If you've been following along, you know that the plan for this pregnancy has been to induce me at 39 weeks if baby boy had not made his arrival. And so today I am 39 and 3, and so I am reporting to the hospital to get things started at 5 o'clock. So I'm hoping that he is here either tonight or in the morning, but I'm trying to go into it with no expectations and just kind of go with the flow so that I don't make myself too nervous about things. If you're interested in the induction experience, I'm going to try to record as much of it as I can. Okay, so I was nervous, like, even though it was an induction, even though it was, it was scheduled, and it wasn't the whole, am I in labor, am I not in labor, the whole lead up and, get out the door to the hospital. I was still pretty nervous. It was about to be like a major life-changing event. It was my first time, so I didn't know what to expect with labor or with contractions or how to feel about anything. I was excited, but nervous. Got to the hospital. Got checked in. They were expecting me, of course. I've heard stories of women get into labor and delivery for their induction and being told that there was no available space and being turned around. That wasn't the case for me. So I, checked in, and after kind of like some initial paperwork, they brought me immediately to the room that I would labor in. it was, and I wrote some footage of it. It was enough space for me and my husband to be comfortable in. And once we got there, you know, the nurses came in, they did the initial, you know, vitals questioning, got me changed into a robe, and did the first cervical check just to kind of get an idea of where I was starting from. Of course, they already had all of my instructions in the computer system from my doctor, and then they came and started my IV. So all of that was kind of done within the first hour of me getting there. So my doctor, because I was only a little bit dilated and my cervix was not completely soft or where it needed to be, my doctor put in an order for me to start Cervidil and be on Cervidil for 12 hours and be followed by Pitocin, and then, you know, be on Pitocin until basically I got to 10 centimeters and I was ready to push. So if you don't know, Cervidil is a medicine that ripens your cervix. It also dilates you, but for most women, Cervidil on its own won't dilate you enough to, it won't dilate you to 10 centimeters. And for some women, it doesn't even get them close to 10 centimeters. For some women, Cervidil on its own won't even dilate them at all. And so my doctor was concerned about, you know, that basically, since I was just, you know, 1.5 centimeters, that the Cervidil on its own wouldn't do it. And so she ordered both the Cervidil and the Pitocin. The Pitocin, on the other hand, is just a stronger form. It's going to make you contract a little faster, a little harder. It's used, I know my sister used Pitocin when she was in labor and she got like stuck at 7 centimeters for an extended period of time. They started Pitocin on her. So basically it's used to, you know, make your uterus contract. And so I was to use them in combinations. Within that first hour that I checked in, so I checked in at 5 o'clock. By 6 o'clock, the nurse had came in and inserted my Cervidil, which was supposed to stay in for 12 hours, or if it kicked me into like labor, where I dilated to 10 centimeters or something like that, it would come out. But I didn't expect that. But the nurse that came in and did my Cervidil insert told me that she was the Cervidil queen, is what she said. And, you know, she had a history of being really good at placing it and her patients going into, you know, active labor and getting far along in the dilation process. So that's what she told me. I didn't really know what to expect. But after they put it in, which inserting it was kind of like inserting a tampon, it did not hurt at all at that point. You know, I had dilated to, I think they said 2 centimeters when I checked in, 2.5 centimeters. So the insertion of the Cervidil was not uncomfortable or painful at all. So, but once it's there, it's there. It stays there for 12 hours. And so after they did that, they did tell me that I could eat and drink up to a certain time frame. I think they told me that I can eat up until, at this point it was like 6 p.m. They told me I can eat until 12. They told me that I could drink up until that time also. So I just kind of settled in for a night of just really not knowing what to expect with the Cervidil. I had heard that cramping was normal with it, so that's kind of what I expected. My husband left, he went and got us something to eat. I did another update at that point for the vlog, and I'll roll that clip because I think that's kind of one of the last updates that I was able to do before things got a little bit intense. All right, induction update number 2. It is still Sunday, April 23rd. It's 10:40. So far the Cervidil has been in for, I guess it's been in for almost 4 hours, and so far I've had I have had contractions, but some I feel, some I don't. They feel mostly like cramps, so nothing too serious, but the Cervidil should be thinning out my cervix and also possibly dilating me. So I guess we'll see kind of an update in a couple of hours, right around the 6-hour mark. And then, like I said, if it hasn't, if my water hasn't broken or anything like that, then they'll take it out at 12 hours. So I'm gonna try to get me some sleep now while these contractions are pretty light, and I will give you guys an update if anything changes throughout the night, or if not, then I will just do another update in the morning. Bye. So as I stated in that clip, by that time it was the night. So after we eaten and kind of relaxed, and I met my nurses, it was 10 o'clock, 10:30. I was finally starting to experience some cramping, which felt mostly like menstrual cramps. They weren't uncomfortable and not painful. But that was the last update that I did, because like literally after I made that update and I had started to experience those period cramps, I really started to experience more painful contractions. And it's interesting because I always was wondering, like, what does contractions feel like? And people always kind of gives you an answer, and it's like, okay, well, what's that mean though? What does that really mean? Like, will I really know when I'm like really having contractions? And I will say that you do really know. Like, it was such a complete difference to me from like, oh, these little cramps are dilating me a little bit, versus, okay, I'm legit having really contractions now. Because to me, the contractions really felt like kind of what they sound like. It's like this build up, build up, build up, build up, build up, and then this peak, for a certain amount of time, and then a release, and then it comes all over again. And so the reason why I didn't really make any more updates is because like literally like once midnight came, I was legit having contractions like every few minutes, like this build up, build up, build up, build up, build up, peak, and then release. And it wasn't so bad where I couldn't breathe through them, but they definitely were painful. And so my nurse came in like shortly after 12:30, 1 o'clock. She checked on me, and I told her, that I was having contractions, which she could obviously see on the screen, and that they were, painful, and that, I was just there, just basically trying, struggling, not struggling, but kind of, breathing through them and everything. So she gave me medication through my IV. So at that point, it wasn't epidural time, but I was having contractions to where I could not sleep. And so she was like, you're gonna have basically a long morning. So let's try to give you something through your IV that can help you relax, and that at least you can go to sleep so that you can get some rest, as we lead up to, you continuing to dilate. So they gave me fentanyl through my IV, which was like a welcome relief, but it was short-lived. So for me, the fentanyl maybe lasted 30 minutes, like literally 30 minutes. I was able to kind of get some rest or relax, but then literally as soon as it wore off, you could feel the contractions, like they were just right there. And so I literally did not sleep at all. Like, I was already in pain, and I hadn't even gotten any Pitocin yet. Like, I was still on the Cervidil. And so I got the first dose of fentanyl around maybe like 1 o'clock, and then later on in the middle of the morning she came back, or she checked on me a couple other times, of course, throughout that. But at a point where I could get more fentanyl, I did, because I was still having really bad contractions, and I really was not able to get any sleep at all. I was in a lot of pain. And so we were getting ready to kind of go into the morning when they were supposed to take the Cervidil out. So they inserted at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5:30, they come back in, they remove the Cervidil, they check my cervix, they tell me that I'm at that point, at that point I was 5 centimeters dilated. So for some people, the Cervidil don't do anything. For some people, it completely dilates them completely. For me, it got me halfway there. So I didn't even expect to get halfway there. So to me, being 5 centimeters made sense as to why I was having what I felt like was really strong contractions. And at that point, once the, 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock come around, they were coming like in waves. Like, I really wasn't getting any relief from them. And so, of course, I wanted my epidural, right? Because I had already told them when I got there, hey, I'm not one of those girls who really want to feel the effects of labor. I want my epidural as soon as I can get it. Basically, as soon as I'm in pain, enough and dilated enough, I want to get my epidural. So there was some lagging of that. That was kind of like the only bad experience I had, I think. is that when I wanted my epidural, of course, it wasn't available. And I know like the anesthesiologists have, you know, different people to administer medicine to, and you know, it's probably only 1 or 2 working. So I knew it would be some time, but I felt like they didn't even request it. Like, even though I was asking for it, they didn't put in the request. And so I don't know if it was because it was like shift turnover time and it kind of got lost in the sauce, or if they didn't want to put it in because that might mean that somebody had to stay. Like, I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that, but I know that at 7 o'clock, when the new nurse came on shift, even though I had been asking for my epidural at that point, it had not been ordered yet. So at 7 o'clock, here comes my, you know, shift turnover. I'm being introduced to my new nurse. My midwife comes in. She's like, well, you know, it's time to have a baby. You know, I'm here to break your water, basically. And I said no. I was like, no. I was like, no, Shannon. That's my midwife's name. I was like, no, Shannon. I'm not letting you break my water because I'm having really bad contractions at this point. I can barely breathe through them. They're coming like so frequently. I'm like literally exhausted. I'm not getting any rest. And I have been asking for my epidural. And so I don't want you to break my water, because I know that once they break your water, then your contractions get stronger. That's what I've always been told. So I said no, that they wasn't going to break my water yet. Of course, that made my midwife question why I did not have my epidural yet. And the day shift nurse, you know, she was like, oh, you know, I'm not sure. I'll look into it. And so she went and looked into it. She put the request in for the epidural. I cannot say enough good things about my nurse, the nurse that came on day shift, the nurse that labored with me, and the nurse that stayed with me from basically the time she got on shift until the time I delivered. Like, she was great. Like, she was so good, and I'm so thankful for her. But, you know, she went in, put the order in, and then within that hour, here comes the anesthesiologist and her tech to give me my epidural. And at that point, I'm just like, oh, you know, thank you. Because I was going through it, y'all. Like, they were really painful to me. And so the anesthesiologist, she comes in, she gets set up, she explains what she's gonna do. Great. Go ahead, go for it. I'm ready. You know, she administers the epidural, and it is immediate relief, like immediate relief. The only thing I had to get through was when she was administering it, I was still having strong contractions. And since they were pretty much at that point coming every 1 to 2 minutes, there were times where I had to just like my husband's hand probably was so, like, I was squeezing it so hard just to kind of like not move and get through those contractions. And so that was difficult, but literally after she's done, like, everything just, your contractions, which go from like painful, just turns to like a dull cramp. Like, you still feel them, but on the pain of 1 to 10, where I was kind of like at an 8 or a 9, you know, they go to like literally like a 0.5, not even a 1. Like, they're literally not painful at all once you get your epidural. You feel them, you feel the buildup, you feel it, but it just feels like a heavy cramp and not at all like a contraction of what I was feeling. So 8 o'clock, 8:30 come, I get my epidural, and finally I'm just like chilling. Like, okay, I'm chilling, you know, I'm waiting. My nurse went, she checked my, like, right after they did my epidural, she checked, she's like, oh, you're 6.5, 7 centimeters. And I was like, whoa, okay. So that's why I was kind of feeling those contractions so strong, because I'm pretty dilated now. And all of this was before they even administered any Pitocin. So my nurse is like, I'm gonna let you continue. We're gonna hold off on Pitocin for now. We're gonna see if you continue to dilate. If you continue to dilate to 10, I won't give you any Pitocin. If you stay on 7 for a while, then we'll give a little bit. We'll just kind of add on to see exactly how much you need to get you where you need to be. So that was the plan. So I was like, all right. So I was just, at that point, I could relax. I could sleep a little bit. I could breathe a little bit. And I was just kind of at that point just playing like the waiting game. I will say that once I got the epidural, I was just really hazy, you know, like really just like, you're so tired at that point. I think that, I don't know if the epidural itself made me sleepy. I just think that you're just so exhausted from the laboring up to that point, that once you do get your epidural, you're just like, whew, okay, I can actually relax, I can actually sit back, I can actually lay down, I can actually sleep if I want to. And so that's what I did. My doctor came in, my OBGYN came in. She went ahead and broke my water, which at that point I didn't care. Go for it, break my water. You know, I'm ready to do this. I'm 7 centimeters. And my nurse, who was awesome, like I said, she starts to like implement this plan of like turning me every 30 minutes, and then turning me on my other side on the other 30 minutes, and then 30 minutes later turning me on. Oh, and at that point she's also starting to administer just enough Pitocin to kind of get me to continue to dilate, basically. And you know, we're just talking, chatting, being turned over, you know. And then literally at 11:30, okay, so I had to replace my memory card. So I think I left off where I had finally dilated to 10 centimeters, and I was getting ready to start pushing. So 11:30 rolls around, my nurse checks, she's like, oh, you're 10 centimeters, great, let's do this. Let me go call your doctor and, you know, see if they want you. She said, let me see if they want you to do some practice pushes or if they're gonna be ready to go, basically. And then like 5 minutes later, my midwife walks in. So I think my nurse may have kind of gave them the heads up that I was getting close, and so she was already in the building, and so there really wasn't any delay. But it was really kind of anticlimactic, honestly, when it was time for me to push. It was kind of like, what, really? It's time for me to push? Like, yes, it's time for you to push. All right, you know. So then my husband on one side and my nurse is on this side. My midwife is there. I did have some students come in, so that will be up to your discretion if you want that. Like, I didn't mind having student nurses and midwives in the room with me. One, because I understand that everybody has to learn, and two, it did make me uncomfortable. So by the time you get to the part of delivery, so many people have seen what's going on that a couple more people, for me personally, was not gonna make or break anything. So they actually were great cheerleaders, so I appreciated having them in the room with me. So yeah, I started pushing at 11:35, and I thought that I don't know why I thought that it would take me like a few pushes and bam, my baby was gonna come flying out, but that's not how it went. So, you know, I started pushing, and for me, well, for everybody, the way it works is that, you know, you push as you feel the contraction coming. So I had an epidural, obviously, so I don't feel what people who are going through a natural birth feels when they are contracting and they're pushing, but you can definitely feel when the contraction is coming, and so you know that you're getting ready to, you know, push. So you have that build, like I said, that build up, and then the contraction, and then you're pushing, and then it stops, and then you stop. You get that break, and so that's kind of how it went. And so I pushed for an hour and 25 minutes. With like no complications, no anything, just, you know, continuing to push. Halfway through, they did give me like a little bit of oxygen just to kind of give me a little bit more of breath, and so that I can kind of take a break. Gave me a little break, and then I just kept pushing. The whole time they were, you know, people were like, oh, you know, it's getting there, we see this, we see that. My husband was like, oh no, you're doing it, baby, you know, because to me it felt like, whoo, I should be done by now. But my husband was like, no, you can see this, you can see that, it's, you know, you're doing so good. Everybody was like, oh, you're doing so good. I'm like, really? I'm exhausted, you know. But an hour and 25 minutes, my doctor was like, okay, you know, his head's coming out, you know, basically here's the head, you know. And she's like, oh, he has a head full of hair, you know, he has a head, he's coming. And she was like, you give me a couple more pushes and I'm gonna put on my, you know, because she was in just her regular like her regular, you know, scrubs. And she was like, you give me a couple more pushes and I'm gonna have to put on my, like, her surgical basically attire, so that she can get ready, like, for the fluids and stuff that are probably gonna come flying at her. And so right at that point, I had, you know, I gave her those 2 pushes. She was like, all right, it's time. You know, she got up, she stopped, she put on her whatever surgical gear, her blue, you know, garb, and the pediatrician nurse comes rolling in. You know, a couple more people come rolling in. They're like, hi, I'm the pediatrician nurse, you know, it's time, you know, basically, because I'm like right there getting ready to push him out. And so she turned around, she's like, all right, let's do it, let's give me a couple more pushes. I pushed and literally, like, I don't want to say hell, but like all hell broke loose in the room. My doctor looked back behind her. She called the code and called for the standby doctor to come back in. She's a midwife. Called for the standby doctor to come into the room. Everybody went from like, woo, the baby's almost here, yay, to like serious faces, scrambling around. Basically, they call what's called a shoulder dystocia, which is when the head delivers, but the shoulder, as it's coming out, gets stuck under the pubic bone. So my baby was stuck under my pubic bone, and in all cases it's a medical emergency, but depending on how severe it is, it ranges from mild to fatal, basically. So I was like freaked, you know, of course I was like freaked out because I could tell that something was wrong. My husband get a little freaked out because he can tell something was wrong. But my midwife stayed super calm once she called her code and told the nurses to, you know, get the standby, to get the OB, to get the doctor in. She turned her focus back to me and on getting my baby out. And so, you know, she looked at me and the nurse looked at me and it's like, all right, we need one more hard push, basically. And so I pushed with everything that I had, and my midwife, in connection with that push, did a maneuver, and out comes my baby basically flying out. And so they put him very shortly on my chest, just for like a short time, and then they like literally just scooped him up, took him away, brought him to the back. By that time the OB had came into the room. The pediatrician, who at that point we had only had a nurse, but the pediatrician doctor came into the room. They take my baby to the back. I can hear him crying, so I know that it's not an issue with whether or not he's breathing on his own, because I can hear him screaming at that point. They're working on him. I can hear a lot of like talk and like a lot of hushed tones, and they're just like, come on baby, come on, you know, trying to talk to him. And then finally I can hear like a cheer from the back of the room. So apparently they were concerned about his shoulder, if his shoulder was broken, the shoulder that had got stuck under the pubic bone, if it was broken or fractured, because at first he wasn't moving it at all. He was kind of favoring it, but finally he moved it, and that gave everybody like a sigh of relief in the room that, you know, everything appeared to be fine. He was breathing on his own, so there was no issues there. A shoulder dystocia for me was on the mild side, but I have, like, afterwards I read a lot about it, and I know that it can have like really bad outcomes. So I'm so thankful to my midwife, like, you know, and my nurses and everybody that stayed calm and did what they were trained to do, and, you know, was able to deliver my baby with no complications. And so once they realized that, you know, he looked good and everything was good to go, it, like, the mood returned more to like a celebratory mood. And the doctor who just happened to be on call was my regular OBGYN. So I go to the office with an OBGYN and a midwife. My midwife was in the room delivering. My OBGYN just happened to be on call. So of course, you know, she came over and she was like, you know, everything looks good. He's beautiful. Everything's, you know, great. And, you know, you did so good. And they started at that point to, like, you know, do his measurements, and they, you know, yell back that he's 8 pounds 1 ounce, you know, 19 inches. So he's a big baby basically. And you know, my midwife comes over. She says that, you know, everything looks good. I'm so out of it, honestly. Like, I'm like, you're kind of like there but not there. It's almost like you're in a fog. You know, all of these things are going on around you, and, you know, you're aware that you gave birth. You're aware that, you know, your baby was in some danger, but that it didn't rise to a level of extreme concern. But it's just like a big fog. And so, you know, after they did the measurements and they put my baby back, like, they come back and finally give him to me and put him in my arms, and, you know, I look at him and I'm like, he looks to me just like he looked on his ultrasound pictures. And, you know, I'm just like exhausted, but I'm happy, and I'm just glad that everything went okay. You know, it's like you hear so many stories about, especially now, like with, you know, Black women and maternal medicine and labor and delivery and things going wrong. And I was just really worried, and I knew that when they called that code, you know, if the baby got stuck, then would they try to rush me in to do a C-section? It was just so much going. So you're like, it's so many things happen at one time. Like, everything's normal, you're pushing, and then, oh crap, something's wrong, and then, oh yeah, actually everything looks good, oh, here's your baby, you know. And so it's just like a whole bunch of emotions basically. And you know, after they gave them to me, things kind of like, you know, calmed down a little bit. They immediately give them to me to do skin to skin. You know, my husband's there, and my nurse is still there, and my midwife is, they're like wrapping up basically. My midwife is, oh, I didn't talk about this part, but my, you know, obviously after the baby came out, they handed them back to the pediatrician, and the nurse and the doctor and everybody was crawling around him to make sure he was good to go. Of course, my midwife still was attending to me because I still had to deliver the placenta, which I didn't even feel at all. Even though she said, you know, we have to deliver the placenta, I didn't even push, I don't think, for the placenta to come out. It kind of just came out, and they got rid of that. And then obviously they then turned to like stitch me up. So the whole time, and the reason why my midwife was taking her time with the delivery is that she was like, you know, we're not gonna, we don't want you to tear basically. So we're gonna do good pushes, you know, we're gonna take your time, you know, then take your breath, then do good pushes and take your breath. We're gonna try to get you to not tear. But then once my baby got stuck under the pubic bone, they called that code, you know, okay, all hands go, you know, it's all, who cares about the tear at that point? You have to get the baby out. And so at that last take, basically when she pulled him out, I did tear. So I had a second degree tear and had to get stitched up also. Yeah, so all of that is going on in the room, basically just like a whole cluster. And then like almost as soon as it's a cluster, things calm down. Like you're there, you're exhausted, you have your baby, people come and say congratulations, your midwife are like, okay, you know, good job, he's beautiful, you know, everything looks good. And then she's out the door basically, and you know, then my nurse is left there with me, and you know, she's there with me to get through like the period of time that goes from the time that you deliver until the time that she wheels you down to the, what do they call it, like post labor and delivery? I think there's like a name for it, but I can't think of it right now. But basically where you go after you deliver your baby. So they move you from like the actual labor and delivery to post delivery, I think is what it's called. But another area of the hospital with, you know, different nurses, and they have a different mission, which is basically to see you from delivery to, you know, through your initial recovery and then to your discharge. So I delivered at 12:54. So I started pushing at 11:25. I delivered at 12:54, and I think I was down to the post labor and delivery ward by like 2 o'clock, 2:30, somewhere around that time frame. It's really not a whole lot of time. So because I think that those nurses on that floor are trained to handle the post side of the house, so the bleeding and, you know, any issues that could come post delivery. And so there really wasn't a whole lot of downtime from the time that I delivered to the time they wheeled me down to the post delivery. And so I got wheeled into another room, met a whole new staff of nurses. After I delivered my baby, let's see, how did I feel? I wasn't in any pain, you know, I couldn't feel anything. The epidural was still pretty strong. I couldn't move, I couldn't really walk or anything at that point. I wasn't in any kind of like distress or anything. I was just like, okay, you know, I had my baby. I remember kind of like getting to my room. He was, you know, we set the bassinet up next to my bed, and you know, my husband at that point was, you know, taking calls and stuff to let people know that the baby was here. And they did come in and check him. One of the first things they did was do an x-ray on his shoulder, because even though he was starting to move, they wanted to make sure there wasn't like any fracture or anything. And so they did that. Everything looked good with the x-ray. And then it was just a rotating thing of nurses coming in, checking my blood pressure, going out, coming in, checking on me, going out. At around 5 o'clock, I guess I would say, I did get up and attempt to walk to the bathroom. Well, you know, of course I called the nurse because they wanted me to call the nurse for that first trip to the bathroom. So even though I had stood and felt like I had my legs at that point, I still did call the nurse, and she helped me get to the restroom. And it wasn't interesting. Like, it was just, yeah. So, you know, post delivery is just like, you just feel like so weird down there. And you know, even though you don't, you know, your epidural is starting to wear off at that point, so like, you know, so you kind of start to feel some pain. It's a lot of blood, but even a lot of blood is not enough blood to be of concern. It's like different levels of, okay, this is a lot of blood, but this is normal, versus, okay, this is too much blood. And I was, of course, in the category, okay, this is a lot of blood, but this is normal. And so it's like, it just is what it is. Like, I was uncomfortable. The epidural was wearing off. I was starting to kind of feel what it felt like down there. So it kind of felt uncomfortable, a little painful. And, it was just not, it's like, it just was what, it just is what it is, but it was just uncomfortable. And then my hospital is what's called like a baby friendly hospital. So your child stays with you from the time that they are born until you leave. Basically, you get discharged. They don't take them to the nursery or anything. So they did, like, for a very short time. One of the techs came in and said that she was going to give him his first bath, and then she asked if, well, do you want me to take him to the nursery and do it so that you can get like a little bit of a break, a little bit of time to take a quick nap? And I was like, me and my husband looked at each other, we're like, yes, yes, just for a short time, and then bring him back. But outside of that, we just kind of settled in. The night was interesting. I breastfed throughout the night, basically on demand, because at that point, Kingston, that's my son's name. He was he was just waking up throughout the night and hungry. And so I just fed on demand. I did have a lactation consultation. They came in and they helped me with latching, because at first my son did not want to latch, or he tried to latch, but we were having some issues. So they did come in and they did help us with that. So I was able to breastfeed throughout the night. And then the next morning, my midwife came in, she checked on me. Everything looked good. I wasn't having any issues that they were concerned about. My blood pressure stayed normal. My bleeding was normal. The baby's testing at that point was normal. And at that point they were like, you might be discharged today. So literally, I gave birth at 12:54 I got there at 5 p.m. on Sunday, gave birth at 12:54 p.m. on Monday, and by 2:00 p.m. I was discharged, because I wasn't having any complications, and neither was my son. Right before we were discharged, at my son's 24-hour appointment, his jaundice test came back high, which is a whole nother story. It's like a whole nother video. It would take me forever to get through it, but it turned into a whole thing where we got discharged with his levels being elevated, but not high enough for him to be treated under the phototherapy, which is common for jaundice in newborns. But within a week, we were at Children's Healthcare, and my son was admitted to NICU for jaundice. So that's like a whole new video. If y'all want me to get into that, I can. I won't in this video because it was a lot. And he's home, of course, and his jaundice is he stayed at the hospital for a weekend, and after many appointments and that hospital stay, his jaundice is gone, and we haven't had any recurrent issues with that. So that's it. So we were discharged. Really, it was like a 48-hour window for me from the time labor started to the time I made it home, which sounds outrageous. 48 hours, really, for the labor, the delivery, the recovery in the hospital, and the discharge back home? I think that was kind of quick, and considering we had the issue with my son's jaundice, I know it was kind of quick. But as far as me and my physical recovery, everything went uncomplicated. I didn't have any issues with blood pressure, so no hypertension issues, no preeclampsia issues, no issues with hemorrhaging or severe bleeding. I bled for about 2 weeks post-delivery, and so I would say right around a week I started to feel better. And then, but I was still bleeding. So I was feeling better physically. I wasn't as sore and uncomfortable, but I was still bleeding. And then 2 weeks, the bleeding slowly tapered off until it stopped at about 2 weeks. After that, I still kind of just took it easy. I didn't want to aggravate anything or like get anything back to where, I was, some people say, oh, they stop bleeding and they start to go and try to get back into the normal routine, and then they will start bleeding again. So I didn't want that to happen, so I still kind of took it easy. Now I am almost 6 weeks. I have my postpartum 6-week visit next week, and so I feel okay. You know, I feel like my stitches healed okay. I feel like I'm not bleeding. I feel like I'm not sore. I feel like I'm kind of back to physically feeling like myself. And so I expect that appointment to be normal. That's what I hope. That is a whole lot. Like, I feel like this video is a lot. And I hope that everything made sense. And I hope I didn't skim over anything too quick. And I hope I didn't talk too fast, because sometimes I have a habit of like talking too fast. But if I missed anything, or if you want me to elaborate on anything, as always, just let me know in the comments. I try to answer all my questions. If it's anything that you kind of want me to discuss or you have a question about, just let me know. I will close the video here. If you've gotten to this point, thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, let me know. I will see you all in my next video. If you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe. Next video is going to be a vlog. I think I'm going to vlog next week, and so that will be my next upload. But as always, if you guys have any questions about anything, let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.